Hi everyone, welcome to the week 2 of our D3 4JS labs. I am Christian Felix, and today we're gonna talk about how to set up D3 and start to loading data to our page. But first, I would like to talk really quickly about GitHub, and because that will be the platform that you should use to upload your code. So if you want to use GitHub to manage also your assignments and so on, you can do that. You will not required. But for your project, you are required to use GitHub and submit the final source code using GitHub, and also host a working version, a demo on the GitHub hosting service. Before GitHub, we have to understand what is Git. So Git is a source management system that it helps you to keep track of what changed in your source code, and also try different versions or work in separate groups of files so you cannot mess up with working versions and so on. So it's useful if you want to manage your code and understand what changed. It's useful if you have collaboration, so if you have more than one person working in the same project, then you know who changed what and how to manage conflicts if two people change the same code. And also allows you to create branches of your main code. So if you are working, for example, in a code that is in the version 1 and you want to start to work in the version 2, but you want to keep the version 1 if you need it, so you can create a branch and work in the version 2 until the version 2 is ready, and then you can merge back. So those are features from the Git source management. And GitHub is one and the most famous one hosting service for Git. So you can use GitHub for free if your repositories are public, and if you are a student, I think you can have 5 private repositories that your code no one can see. But after that, your code has to be public, it has to be open source. And it also allows you to host static pages. So if you are only using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript inside the client, you can host in GitHub for free. Unless you need some database or some server-side code, then you need something else. But for most of the case, you can just host your demo on GitHub, even if you are using JSON files or your data source. And also have a social component, so you can start some repositories, you can follow people, you can see their profiles, see what they are working on. So GitHub, from Git you need the executable, so you have to go to the website git/scm.com and download the binary files for Git. And in GitHub you'll be our server where we're gonna host our code. So in this case you have to go there and create an account, and we'll see how you do that. Important about Git is that you have commands. The first thing you need init is to start a Git repository. So if you have a folder, you have a source code there, you want to start to manage that code, you can just use the init command and Git is working, and you can start to manage the branches and all the changes on your code. Clone, if you have a Git repository in some server somewhere and you want to clone it on your machine, you want to start working in this code. And remote is when you have a local that you, for example, use Git init, you start to have some repository local and you want to send to some remote server, then you can use remote to add this server. Then we have, so those three usually you will use just once during your project. And then you have the ones that you use very frequently. There is add, when you want to add new files to the repository, because just adding them to the folder not necessarily add them to the repository. Commit, when you want to save the changes that you made to the files to Git. So Git keeps track of what changes, but if you want to send this to the server, you have to first commit the data. Then push is when you send the data to the server. So you don't have to push every time you commit. You can keep committing, and then once you have a version that you want to send to the server, you can push. And pull is once you want data from the server to download to your current repository. So let's suppose that you are in a team and some other person changed the code. So to receive these changes, you have to pull the code from the server. And checkout is to create and change branches. So if I am working in the version 1 and I decide now to work in the version 2, I can use checkout to change to the version 2 branch. So let's just go over GitHub really quickly and see how it works. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is check if you have the Git command line installed. So you can go to your command line that you use and just type git -- version, and then you see something like this, like git in your version. If you see command not found or can't run or things like that, then that means that you don't have git. Then you can go to git -scm.com, and then you can download the Git command line tools that you usually find here on the right side. You can look for your operational system and install Git. Once you install Git, you can go to GitHub and create your account. So you just have to select a username, an email, and a password, and then you have a user account and be able to start. Once you log in Git, you will see usually on your left a list of what happened in repositories that you follow, in groups that you are working with. On the right side, you have the repositories that you contribute to and repositories that you create. So you can decide which one you want to work. So we want to create a repository. Then I can go to new repository. In the new page, I can select the repository name, that in my case will be D3 Labs. And then if you want, you can provide a description, like labs exercises. And you can make it public or private. So if you are a normal user, you are not paying, everything has to be public. If you have an organization account, or if you are a student, you can ask for 5 free private repositories. In my case, I'll make it public, and I do create repositories. So you can start your repository adding some default files, but I prefer to just create the repository and add these files myself. Once you create the repository, Git will provide you how do you start with sending files to this repository. So you can try to clone this repository on your machine. You can create the repository from scratch and then just push to Git. Or if you have a repository already that you are working on, you can just push the data. Or if you have another source code tool like Subversion, Team Foundation Service, you can just import the data. So we will follow more or less this idea here. We want to start a new Git, we want to add a file, we want to commit this file, and then push to our server. So let's see how we do that. Okay, so I created a folder in my computer that I want to store all my files, all my code, and it's called D3 Labs Git. So this is the name of the folder. And I want to init this repository to start. So I can do git init, and then I have a repository started. One thing is that you are seeing this git here master. So this is because I have a tool that tries to help me when I'm using Git. So don't worry if you don't see that. If you keep just seeing D3 Labs, this is not required to show up. Depends on which terminal you are using. But you see that we have a Git repository initialized. The next step is I want to add some file here. So we can add a README file. So a README file a README file is a file that once someone accesses your repository, it will tell these people what this repository about, what project is this one. And in our case, it just show hello, but the name of the file has to be readme.md, and here you can use what we call markup language to format how your page will look like. So okay, now we have a file, and I want to add this file to my Git repository. So until now Git is not taking care of that. So I want to add this file. I can do git add. You can do the name of the file like readme.md, or you can just type dot, so it will add any file in your folder. And now I want to commit this file, that is save this. So you are required to provide a message, information about this commit. So you can do -m and then type whatever comment you want to put. So readme file. Okay, so now everything is saved, but it's still in my machine. I have to submit this to the server. And how do I do that? The first thing, I have to add the remote repository. So if we come back to the Git page, you will see that they have this command here, and they already replaced the last part with your information. So Christian Felix is my account, and D3Lab is my repository. So you can just copy this. But basically, you are adding a remote and for this URL. So that tells Git to submit the code to this server. Okay, now they know where to submit, but I have to send the code. And then I can use git push. Okay, now my code should be on GitHub. Let's refresh the page and see. Okay, so I have my file here, and I have the content of the README file here. So, and we can keep adding new files. One thing that is interesting about GitHub is that you can host your pages here. So let's create a simple page. So my page will have HTML as usual. And then I will have a body. I will not create a head section. I just want to have some. Oh. Okay, so I have a HTML page here. Let's save. You can see that we have the file here. We have again to git add dot, so I add the file, git commit -m, and then I can write add index file, and then I can push that to the server. Okay, so now everything is in the server. Let's check. So you see that I have the index.html file here. Now I want to host this. How do I do that? So you just have to go to branch and create a new branch called GH pages. It has to have this exactly name. Once I create the branch, what will happen is that now I have two options here, master and GH pages. But GitHub will create a URL for my project. So if you want to see this URL, you can go to settings. And you see here, your site is published at christian.felix.git.io/d3labs. So let's check if it's working. So here is my page that I just created. And this is a public URL. You can give it to anyone and they can access. And even if your repository is private, the page, the published page, will be public. Okay. Okay, but let's suppose that I change my code, right? I want to edit my page. And I want to add a new line here. Right, I will save. Let's do the same thing. Commit, sorry, add, commit, and push. So the page is updated, but I am updating the master branch. So one thing that we have to take care, so if I open index here, I can see that the changes are here. But if I go to my G8 pages, the index is not updated. So what you can do, you can merge both. You can merge the master with the G8 pages. How can I do that? So you can go hidden branch, and then you can just create a new pull request and select master here. Then you can add a description again and just create pull request. Once you have the pull request, you have just to merge and confirm the merge. Now the G8 pages should be updated. Let's check. Master G8 pages index.html is updated. Let's check the hosting part. Let's refresh. Now we have the new A2 that I just add. Okay, so this is GitHub. We just saw how to create an account, how to create a repository, add information to this repository. And so I want you to go there and try yourself now. Create a GitHub account. And this is important because this account will be used for your project as well. Create a repository, add a readme MD file with some information, add an index.html file showing hello world, and publish this page using the G8 page branch and test your page. For your assignment, you don't have to submit the code, but you have to submit the link for the page. So the same way I have a link using with my name and the name of my repository, you have to submit the link of your page for the assignment.